Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Greetings of peace from whichever part of the world you are from. Distinguished partners, UNDP and Global Coalition on Youth, Peace, Security and UN Desa, young public servants from Major Group for Children and Youth, Friend for Leadership and Asian Youth Network, and other youth panelists from European Youth Forum, Global Young Green Kenya, and YMCA United States of America. On behalf of International Youth Center or IYCMalaysia and ASEAN Youth Council Secretariat, AYC, we warmly welcome you to our ECOSOC Youth Forum side event, Youth and the Future of Governance. IYC is your ally in meaningful youth engagement, as well as inclusive, accountable, and good governance in the wider Asia-Pacific region and the rest of the world. We recognize the great progress made by the global level with the impending Youth 2030 Progress Report 2021. Regional, national, and local perspectives are given more attention by the United Nations, as seen in the UN reform on youth programming in the country level. At the same time, we echo the consistent need to reflect about meaningful youth engagement, referred to as the UN's work with young people in the implementation, review and follow-up of the 2030 Agenda. Asia-Pacific is the most diverse region in the world, with the largest population of young people. Now, more than ever, we are inspired to take a lead in meaningful representation, especially of fellow regions from the Global South. As we all learn from history, equality is rooted in diversity and inclusion. Women lead. 25 years from the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, women's leadership remains low despite commitments. They are still underrepresented in all leading positions, whether in politics, the civil service, or the private sector. Stop Asian Hate. The hashtag Stop Asian Hate has spread across social media with the full support of the UN Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres. The recent anti-Asian racism, verbal and physical harassment in the US is not only recent, but a historically rooted problem in the global north. In some countries, Asian women have been specifically targeted by misogyny and abuse. We are very grateful to our international partners, especially the United Nations, for all your efforts around multiculturalism and social inclusion. In Malaysia, which is host to the International Youth Center, IYC, and Asian Youth Council, AYC Secretariat, we invest in institutionalization of both meaningful youth engagement and youth representation. Our effort has been geared towards breaking the silos between youth who are in decision-making spaces and young people on the ground. AYC has supported the Asian Youth Peace Network in its scaling of e-learning modules, YPS for YPS, Youth Peace Security for Young Public Servant, with the Asian Institute for Peace and Reconciliation targeted to youth parliament, youth political parties, youth council, and the like. IYC for Peace by International Youth Center Malaysia aims to refocus IYC, its program and services, while providing more spaces for grassroots youth volunteers to engage in the UN's sustaining peace agenda. Finally, at the end of this session, We expect that our team, our co-organizers, youth speakers and guests will exchange not only perspective but more so best practices. Let us gather inputs on how to make our youth institution and policies more inclusive, sustainable and accountable. Let us find concrete doorways for partnerships to sustain intergenerational and inter-regional dialogues, especially during this pandemic. Let us inspire our young public servants and young peace builders to co-lead a new generation full of solidarity, leaving no peer or stakeholder behind. Youth are not only the future, they hold the special keys to good governance in a post-COVID world. For this, I end my speech and wishing you good luck in this forum. Thank you.
By young people leading actions in a broad range of areas, from corruption to access to justice, to community level development, to political participation and civic engagement on citizen security. So just really encouraging you to have a look at that. Also, we recently launched in the context of the work on youth peace and security, the first UN programming handbook on youth peace and security. And this is really looking at how young people can be at the heart of policy and programs in the context of this agenda. And this is really essential as well. I mean, recognizing how young people can be part of the design and the implementation and the monitoring and evaluation of programs. And the handbook also includes specific entry points for policy and program, and including under the pillar on participation that Regine just mentioned. So encouraging you to have a look at that. Really welcome again to all colleagues, to all young people that are dedicated and dedicating a lot of time, commitment, energy also to being part of UN processes. Let's continue these intergenerational discussions, these very important multi-stakeholder dialogues. Let's also remember that it's important to be where young people are and also contribute to youth-led spaces. So thank you very much, Regine and Sharifa, again for doing all the heavy lifting around this event, and I look forward to a very fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Noella, for always being such a staunch supporter of young people. All right, without further ado, I would be happy to introduce the very first speaker, who's a very good friend of mine. Dr. Roman Chukov holds a PhD degree in political science and has a number of scientific publications on G7, G20, and BRICS, was twice awarded by the state for working at the Russian G20 and BRICS presidencies in 2013 to 2015. For more than 10 years, Roman has been involved in the mentioned formats on behalf of Russia and serves as chair of the board at the Russian Center for Promotion of International Initiatives and research fellow at the Institute of Economy and the Russian Academy of Sciences. In 2018, he has been elected and appointed by the UN Secretary General as a Russian representative in the multi-stakeholder advisory group of the UN Internet Governance Forum, and of course is the founding member of Friends for Leadership. Roman?
I just understood that there is a need to change the biography. I think we just need to keep a couple of lines. That's a good friend of mine, and that would be fair enough, I believe, because we are being all separated during this pandemic. We all need friendship more than something else. This is my firm belief, and maybe one of my main titles, I would prefer Friends for Leadership. This is exactly what we plan to do. By the way, I am speaking to you from our venue, Russian Internet Governance Forum, the Youth Russian Internet Governance Forum. We gathered several hundred young people and we discuss global data, digital economy, digital infrastructure of the internet, and very, very interesting things. And I imagine that governance in the digital sphere is now more than relevant just because after the pandemic, we realized how much interconnected we are, how much we do rely on technology. When the pandemic happened offline, we now understand that we cannot allow it to happen online. And this, I believe, will be my main key message, that we need to set up a rules of the game. We need to understand how to ensure digital cooperation for the years to come, and to ensure that the younger generation is constantly involved into such processes. So basically, I believe that if recently we have discussed global warming, I don't know, human rights, migration, food security, other challenges, now we need to undoubtedly include the digital component of that, because otherwise it would be absolutely non-relevant discussion. And I honestly don't want to take more time than I just already took. I wish luck to all other speakers and participants. Happy to answer your questions if you have them. Thank you.
Thank you, Roman, for joining us despite your time constraint. I heard, as you often mention, a lot of references around best practices, sharing best practices, and of course, emphasis on social inclusion. I think this is a shared advocacy around young public servants from wherever part of the world they're from. And with that, I'm happy to introduce our next speaker, who is also from Friends for Leadership, but wears many different hats as well, like you. So he's also from Major Group for Children and Youth, and is the president of the local youth councils of Morocco. Nidal is first and foremost ASILA's local youth council founder, which enabled him to be the president of the Moroccan network of local youth councils. How exactly do young people participate in today's post-COVID world? Or actually, still the pandemic, we're still in the pandemic.
Thank you so much, Regine. Do you hear me very well?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much, and very happy to represent the Morocco Local Youth Councils Network in this amazing ECOSOC Youth Forum side event of 2021. Especially that this year, the ECOSOC is celebrating the 10 years of networking and working together to improve the youth lives around the world. And very happy also to see many colleagues here with us, and some beautiful faces, and hope that we can meet sooner, inshallah, in other events face-to-face sooner. Actually, our world is facing a difficult moment where we need to work together to pass through this hard and complicated situation of the corona pandemic. The situation showed that working alone is not the key, but working together and leaving no one behind. It's time for more collaboration and more work together, because together we can go far. Actually, I mean, by asking your question, you gave me the idea of talking about governance, but not only about governance, because youth participation in either national or local level, it's related to that government. And in this side event, where we're gonna talk about the youth governance and local and the participation in general. And there is a relation, as I always say, between governance, youth, and participation. Will lead us to talk about the youth participation in different countries around the world, of course, and especially here that we'll be talking about the MENA region or the Moroccan side. I believe in the Moroccan Local Youth Council that without youth participation, there is no good government. We can reach a good level of government without including the youth and young leader in the decision that is made by different government. Good governance, it's always organized by many factors. One of that factor, it's the maybe we can say most important factors of good government. It's the participation, rule of law, and transparency factor. The first one is the participation. That's why in the local youth councils, we believe that a real good government will include youth in all decisions and give them the chance to lead. That's why the good governance also is related to youth participation. Our region of the MENA region, Middle East and North Africa, have a very small percentage of participation of youth in politics, and there is some official statistics that shows and that only 1% of youth who participate in political parties. However, in the other side, there is more than 50% of youth that they share their political view, opinion, or ideas in the social media. That's why it's very important to go to the key of that lack of participation in politics and try to find solution to bring that trust and to trust to youth and to that category. I believe that after our this side event, that we need to work together and collect the best practices around the world of youth participation to improve it. Because by improving it, we are improving also the government. I would like also to request from all of the participants of local governments, of international organizations, to give the chance to youth, and especially in the local level, and listen to their ideas, because a good government will exist only by good local participation and participation in general. I'm also waiting if there is any other question. Thank you so much, Deriji.
Shukran jazilan, Nidal. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for keeping it brief. We'll have more time for question and answers and a more interactive dialogue later on. With that said, I'm happy to introduce another colleague from the Major Group for Children and Youth, who is my fellow at the board of CYI. She is the head of long-term international climate strategy and co-chair of the Civil Service Race Forum of the UK government. Sharon has advocated for race equality across government and civil society for the past 4.5 years as co-chair of the cross-government Civil Service Race Forum and Base Faith and Minority Ethnic Network. She has worked to tackle racism and address institutional bias across government and provide solutions to barriers facing Black, Asian, and minority ethnic staff, which is quite relevant, very relevant actually to our chosen specified theme today, which wants to tackle the issue of gender and also racial minorities. Sharon, are you here with us? Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much, Virginie, and thanks to everyone. And great interventions from the previous speakers. So I'm just going to share some brief reflections on the topic of youth and governance. And I think that what everyone has said so far is absolutely key. I think that there's a need both particularly for stakeholder engagement mechanisms which treat children and youth as a constituency and ensures that we're understanding the full spectrum of views and recommendations and priorities from youth on the ground through, within our decision-making processes, and making sure that youth and their representatives are at the table in that capacity. But equally, as other speakers have mentioned, ensuring that there's participation of youth within all of the different civic structures, as kind of individuals participating, whether it's in politics, running for office, or whether it's like me, serving in public service and kind of decision-making and policy-making from within. And I guess, just to clarify, I'm here today sharing my experiences as a young public servant. I lead on, our long-term international climate strategy for the UK government, but my views are not on behalf of the UK government. And I guess, across these two kind of areas, which can sometimes be in tension, but I think often are very complementary, having those representative spaces as well as young people in decision making. I guess the one really big challenge I think to bring out is to make sure that we're having fully diverse and representative groups across them, with a particular focus on marginalized and affected populations. I think this is absolutely key to achieving the 2030 agenda and making sure no one is left behind. So I guess one thing I was reflecting on was that when we're consulting youth and when we're seeking to understand kind of youth recommendations, it's important, yes, to be talking to relevant youth activists and organizations working in that thematic area, whether it be climate change or peace and conflict. but it's also really important just to talk to general affected populations, because even if they're not an activist, they are also being impacted by the policies. They're at the forefront often of experiencing some of the inequalities which come out of issues such as conflict, and therefore their views absolutely need to be heard. And I think that often what can happen is that spaces can be dominated by others who have specific sets of privileges. So for example, that could be language privilege. You know, the UN is predominantly English speaking, although obviously there are 5 major languages, and those who don't have fluent English might not be able to have as much of a say. And same with kind of socioeconomic and educational privilege, where those who, you know, have a higher degree of education can to an extent access more spaces. And same with kind of technology privilege, which I think that Roman was touching on earlier as well. And, you know, not everyone has access to internet or stable internet connections to participate in forums like this. So I think there's a really big key question on like, how do we make sure that the spaces we're creating for youth are truly accessible and inclusive, and where barriers exist, you know, trying to overcome or be creative in our solutions to ensure that we're representing the full spectrum of youth views rather than a kind of small subset. I guess also just thinking about, so thinking about the applications of some of this, you know, within youth spaces, I think it requires us, you know, whether it's in our individual organizations or kind of within our collective umbrella groups and constituencies, to be asking some really hard questions.
Sharon, we don't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Did you hear me up until that point, though?
Hard questions.
Okay, great. I'm glad. I was like, I hope I wasn't speaking for like, you know, 3 minutes with, you know, everyone just on mute watching me. Yeah, so I think it's just, you know, asking some of those hard questions and examining, you know, who is underrepresented, you know, whether it be people from indigenous groups or ethnic minorities, or women or other types of groups, and how can we be reaching out and making sure that they are proactively participating in our youth spaces. When it comes to kind of governance and opportunities, it's about, you know, having schemes. For example, in the UK government, there are schemes for people who don't have higher education to enter government at a lower level and work full time, then they can climb the ladder. And it's about creating, you know, opportunities for those from lower socioeconomic backgrounds or those from ethnic minority groups who traditionally find it more difficult to access to have easier, not easier, but to have entry routes, I guess, into these spaces, and for political parties having young leadership programs so that people can build their capability, understand more about politics, and get involved. So I think it's just really important to address, I guess, not just talking about you know, the importance of youth in governance, but making sure that we are truly opening it up and making sure that marginalized and affected communities participate in all levels. So thanks very much for having me, and happy to take questions later.
Thank you so much, Sharon, for your sharing. So just now we can see that Sharon shared a little bit on challenges and also opportunities for young people to meaningfully engage in shaping the governance. And we can see also that Sharon mentioned in the chat box, also our audience are reflecting. Dr. Maliki said, Sharon mentioned that be creative in solution. So yes, for those who are underrepresented, it is important for us to highlight them and then to give them opportunities, especially in shaping the governance. So for the next speaker, we have another young and vibrant speaker, I may say, Ms. Christiana Xenofontos from Cyprus. So Ms. Christiana is working as a parliamentary associate at the House of Representatives in Cyprus, and she is previously working as youth policy officer at the Cyprus Youth Council, and also served as chairperson at the National Working Group at the EU Youth Dialogue in Cyprus. So without further ado, I would like to invite Ms. Christiana to share on multilateralism and also about diversity and also social inclusion in youth participation, especially in the youth governance. So without further ado, I would like to invite our next speaker, Ms. Christiana.
Thank you, Sharifa. Thank you. And I'm also here representing the European Youth Forum as a board member, just for you to know. But before I start, I would like to thank all the co-organizers for inviting actually the European Youth Forum into this side event of the ECOSOC Youth Forum that also has its 10th anniversary. Please allow me to start by making some references to numbers so as to give a broad view on how the pandemic actually highlighted or made even worse the already existing reality that young people all over the world have to face. 1 in 8 young people have been left without any access to courses, teaching, or training. 1 in 6 young people who were employed before the outbreak of the pandemic stopped working, not to mention that 2 out of 5 young people had to deal with a serious reduction to their income when at the same time working hours, mostly due to the online transition, haven't been respected. 1 in 3 young people face difficulties to their right to participate, and 27% experience difficulties in exercising the right to freedom of religion or belief. And last but not least, 1 in 2 young people are possibly subject to anxiety or depression, while a further 17% are probably already affected by it. And average mental health is worse for young women as well as for younger youth. But while we're having these numbers that are far from what we call youth participation or youth rights or equal representation or youth into the decision making, we have also the bright side that is once again a victory by young people, despite the pandemic situation around them. Over 1/4 of young people had a high degree of engagement in volunteerism and making donations towards COVID-19. And actually, youth's involvement in activism has been increased during April and May back in 2020. What these numbers are telling to us is that young people, despite being affected by the pandemic, also being the so-called lost generation for some, which I do not believe it at all, were able to demonstrate their solidarity, and they position themselves in the core of finding and implementing alternative methods of participation and solutions, of course, to the pandemic. These numbers are coming from a survey, from the Global Survey on Youth and COVID, which I can share later in the chat box. Now moving a step forward, talking a bit more about the European Youth Forum. For the people that they probably don't know, the European Youth Forum, which is the biggest youth platform in the world, is also part of the EU Youth Dialogue process. The EU Youth Dialogue aims to boost young people's involvement in the democratic processes by ensuring that their voices and opinions count. I'm trying to bring into our discussion the Europe's angle in order to share some good practices, by the way. So the EU Youth Dialogue, which is a process that lasts 18 months involving consultations with young people and youth organizations in the EU member states, and it is one of the main projects of the Youth Forum that is participating actually as a co-coordinator during the implementation. Moreover, a milestone of the process has been the EU Youth Goals that can be interlinked with the SDGs. And in fact, in this cycle, we're working on Youth Goal number 9, which is actually youth participation for all. Another good practice that I want to share with you, which we use as a tool in the Youth Forum, is our policy papers. Recently, we have adopted our youth participation policy paper back in November 2020. And this policy paper actually provides guiding principles for institutions and policymakers on how to engage young people in decision-making processes, making the engagement a quality one. And here I also want to briefly mention that as European Youth Forum, we stand for gender equality. It is something that we internally have implemented as Gender Watch, and it's a mechanism during our general assemblies that ensures equal representation of the co-chairs. Also, together with our MOs, we advocate towards any possible way to ensure that all young people have access to inclusive education systems But for us, education is not something frameworked in a box. We also have to do with non-formal education and youth work, which is in the high priority of our work. And I want to finish my speech by sharing with you a fear and a hope. My fear is that if we don't support young people, our societies will be more damaged and eventually they will collapse. And my hope as a young people myself, as a young person myself, is that young people are able to actively participate in decision making. What they really need is the environment around them, including governments and institutions, to be supportive and to fully believe in and trust their potentials. We are not the lost generation. We are in fact part of the society, a crucial one, and we are working hard to rebuild our reality, especially after the pandemic that we are still going on. What we need is a supportive social and economic environment that will include all of us and will ensure that no discriminations are taking place despite gender, despite religion, despite beliefs. And I am happy to accept any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christiana. I really like about your tagline on supporting young people. So like our youth envoy said, nothing about us without us. So that is a very popular tagline among youth. So I think it is very important for us to include youth in decision making, not only in governance, maybe in other decision making level as well. So I will proceed with the next speaker because we are running a little bit late for this session. I will invite the next speaker, Mr. Mugozi from Young Greens Party of Kenya. He is the Youth League President for Young Greens Party from Kenya, and he will talk more on the gender equality and the participation of young women leaders in governance. So over to you, Mugozi Harold.
Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity to be able to represent the young people of Africa and Kenya, to be specific. As Ella said, I'm going to talk about two things specifically. Number one is the gender, the practices that we have put in as a party, the best practice that we have as a party to include young people and more women to participate in our governance. As a party, we internally recognized that it is not only enough to put young people in positions of leadership, but to have them in strategic positions where they're involved in decision making. And so our key strategy, number one, that we use as a party is we have fully implemented intergenerational co-leadership. That is, for every position of decision making in our party, which are the top 6 positions in our party, we have the executive director of our party, we have the party chairperson, the party treasury, the party secretary general, and the leader of the youth of the party, which I am serving in. We have a co-leader of the opposite gender. So in our party, 80% of this population is below 35. And for every position, like our party leader is above 35, but we have a female co-party leader who is below the age of 35. So that is number one. Number two, to empower young people to be more involved and more productive in positions of leadership and decision making, they need a lot of civic education. And so as a party, we are continuously involved in educating our young people on the various principles and tenets of leadership and the current affairs that they need to have in order to be able to deliver on their mandate adequately. As a party, we are currently running the Green Academy 2021, which is a platform where we are giving young people opportunity to get experience from other young leaders, not only in Kenya, but from all over the world. We are partnering with other organizations, including WFD, the Green Party of England and Wales, and other parties locally. Number three, which is also very important, is as a party, we have a 50-50 gender equality principle. That is, for every activity that we engage in, we have to have 50% representative from either genders, whether it's male or female. If it's one male, one female, that is how we do it in a party. And those have enabled us to appeal to the young people, and not only appeal to them, but to be able to make them understand their role as leaders today and not future leaders. You know, here it's in Africa, it's common to say that youth are leaders of tomorrow. In our party, we say the youth are the leaders of today. And so we are involving them actively in the leadership of our party. Now, it's good to note that in Kenya, 75% of the people are youth. And so the big question again is, how do we involve more young people in governance in the entire country? And when I got the call to speak on this occasion, we had a discussion with the party leadership, and we had a look at really our country and how we are involving our youth. And some points are coming in. Number one, as a country, to involve more young people, we need to appreciate fully the benefits of devolution. In 2010, Kenya really took a radical stance, and we promulgated the 2010 devolution constitution, which brought 47 countries, the first of its kind in sub-Saharan Africa. And so we have 47 sub-governments, and the youth can use these opportunities to get more involved in governance. So how do they get there? Number one, the governments need to teach young people how to self-organize, how to come together as young people and come up with agenda that are in line with government policy and programs, so that at the end of the day, you have a chance to for funding and the implementation of your programs. Number two, as a country, we have the National Youth Council. It is our belief that if the National Youth Council is devolved, so that we have 47 youth councils at the grassroots, more young people will have an opportunity to reach, to climb through the structures of leadership and be able to be involved in governance at different levels. Another important thing that we have to talk about is that young people need to be involved in issues of budget, because this is where activities are done. You know, if you don't have your activities in a budget, then it means in the country's budget, then it means none of it will be implemented. So if young people are involved at the level of budgeting, at the level of policy, they're given more responsibility in the budget formulation, then it will be easy for them to bring in the agenda and have the government fund these activities. Lastly, is that we believe that the government should break the information barrier that makes it difficult for young people to access most government opportunities. For example, you realize that we have a government employment, a government employment portal, but not many young people, especially in the villages where there is no internet, have access to such beautiful opportunities that have been put in by the government. And so we encourage our governments to deliberately make such information available to the youth at all the levels. And so if all these are done collectively, are done at the party level, we'll have more young people, and especially women, involved in governance now and in the future. Thank you so much for your time, and I believe we are going forward as a youth generation today and for tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Harold, for addressing a very important point of gender equality. We agree that we need 50-50 equal representation in any party for the political party and to run the government, to run the country, because it's very important also to have intergenerational view so that we have a balance. we can say balanced country, balanced representation in the country. So without further ado, I would like to invite the next speaker, Ms.Dania González from Nueva Ideas Party, El Salvador. Dania will touch on youth-led grassroots organization, how she meaningfully engaged with the governments and also the formal institution to advance peaceful, just, and inclusive society. So I would like to invite Dania. Over to you.
Hello, thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. This is Dania from El Salvador. And right now, I'm glad to be the youngest Congresswoman who will represent my country, El Salvador. Well, we young people are the majority in every country and around the world. We present the future. We are the present and the future, and the future depends on us. We should prepare, study, get experience, be well organized, which is very important. And congratulations to be part of this side event, because that helps us to have a huge network and also to be well organized and lead these decision-making spaces that we have in our country, in our organization, and also in international spaces like this one. Because the decision-making spaces belong to us. We can take leadership not only in spaces for young people like this one, but instead we can lead these decision-making spaces for everyone. The intergenerational that is existing in the present is an advantage for us because we can learn from other people's experience and avoid making mistakes that happened in the past. There are many new ways to govern, but I know for many of us, young people, sometimes we're afraid due to many reasons, and the age and lack of experience, I know it challenges us. But we need to let people know that this is an opportunity for them to see our potential and to leave a legacy for young people that is younger than us. El Salvador, for example, we are the smallest country in Latin America, one of the smallest one, but we have the youngest president around the world. His name is Nayib Bukele, and he has demonstrated that if we have leadership and political will, which is very important, we can make great things to happen in our country. And we can also transform the politic. Our political party, Nuevas Ideas, which is the one I'm representing right now, is the newest in the country. And right now we have the majority of Congress people in El Salvador, and also we have the government. So right now we are in a very good position to make great things to happen in El Salvador and to transform the way in the past they made the politic. And as a youngest congresswoman ever in the history of my country, I have the commitment to make proud every single person that voted for me, but not only them. I will work for every single Salvadoran inside and outside our country. And I think these type of spaces are very important for us to share knowledge, to share best practices, because this is the way I started. And right now I will have the opportunity to let other young people to get involved. Our political party is full of young people, and we were running, the majority of us who were running for a charge of public elections, we were more than 80% of young people participating. So this is a new way to make politic. And also, I know it's very hard sometimes, like the political parties, but I think if we are not into the political parties, sometimes it gets harder to be on those spaces. And those spaces, remember, they belong to us. And it has been a pleasure for me to share with you this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dania, for your very interesting speech. I can see that you also addressed that it is important for us to engage young people, and it is a very important start to start at the very beginning level. I can say, for every youth there is a need of for training before they enter any political party and any government association. So I will proceed with the next speaker. Maybe I will invite Mr. Gilberto for a very quick way forward because he needs to leave for this session. So I would like to invite Mr. Gilberto Duarte from UNODC, also a member of the CYPS, Global Coalition for Youth, Peace and Security, to give a little bit way forward remarks on, maybe concluding remarks on whatever shared by our panels just now. Please, Mr. Gilberto.
Thank you very much, Raifa, for this brief introduction, and I'm very happy to be here and speak to all of you on behalf of UNODC. It's also nice to see some of the young people with whom we've been collaborating over the past few years. Very briefly, I would like to...
Gilberto, sorry
yes?
to interrupt. Maybe we cannot hear you clearly.
Oh. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So very briefly, on behalf of UNODC, I would like to echo some of the comments that were made by some of the panelists, as well as some of the previous speakers, in saying that meaningful participation and engagement of young people should be at the core of implementing the 2030 agenda. I think that listening to the different speakers from the different regions, we have been able to see how some of the underlying issues cross borders, and how effective participation in civic spaces still face some challenges in different parts of the world. But it is also very encouraging to see how young people, including young parliamentarians, have been actively working to change this scenario. And at UNODC, we have actively been working with young people and also young parliamentarians worldwide to address participation more specifically within the areas of our mandates, which include the rule of law, crime prevention, and criminal justice. But I would like to invite everyone, as we look forward beyond this this ECOSOC Youth Forum, I would like actually to invite you all to consider civic spaces and young people's participation under two lenses, which we cannot dissociate. The first is participation as a right in itself. And we have emphasized this through not only a number of human rights treaties, but also specific conventions. Those that fall within UNODC's mandates include the UN Convention Against Corruption, for example. But in addition, I think that participation is in itself a means through which we can achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And I would actually like to highlight the fact that the challenges we currently face when it comes to participation in civic spaces are a challenge to the implementation of the 2030 agenda itself. As we know from the 2030 agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals, participation is key to make them work. And a whole of society approach means no doubt that young people have to be involved. And if these spaces
Hello?
track to implement the 2030 agenda. So I think that it is extremely important to recognize the instances where young people worldwide are making this work and learn from their experiences, as we have been doing at the United Nations for a number of years now. So it is with this very encouraging set of recognition from the different speakers who were with us today that I would like to just close with this reflection in saying that despite the challenges, we have amazing examples of young people working in different places, from El Salvador to Kenya, and all continents really can give us important tips and examples to follow. So thank you very much for this, and I wish you a successful rest of the event.
Thank you so much, Gibraltar, for joining us today. I believe you also have other sessions to conduct after this. So we are very grateful for having you today. And dear participants, I hope you guys have a very wonderful listening to all the sharing just now. I will pick a few questions from the chat. Maybe I will just summarize because I can see like you are addressing similar key points. Maybe any of the panelists can respond because most of our question here is referring to how important for us to have meaningful and effective partnership between adults and also the youth, and how important for us to give training for the youth before they enter the governance decision making. So any of our panels want to respond this question?
Maybe I could go.
Yeah, thank you, Harold.
And yes, I'm saying it's really important to educate young people on various responsibilities that they will have to deal with when they get into positions of governance. Why? Because there are processes and bureaucracies involved, and the youth need to be aware of this. Number two, there is a lot of accountability and responsibility that is expected of them in positions of governance. And so they have to be prepared to deal with those responsibilities, to be accountable, and most importantly, to be productive. It's not just about giving youth positions of governance, but are they going to be productive? Are we going to see results? And that is why, as a party in Green Congress of Kenya, we focus on training young people before we engage them on leadership.
Thank you, Harold.
Thank you
for responding to that question. And maybe I pick one more. Okay, there is one participant said, I just read the reflection from the participant as well instead of the question. Lies, if I pronounce your name correctly. Lies said, yes, we need government to work together with NGOs towards young people independence. Only NGO itself won't solve anything. So they are important, but the power of government is much bigger than any NGOs. So this is also referring maybe to the partnership. That is why we really emphasize on SDG 16 and also SDG 17, because partnership won't happen if we are not cooperate with people at all levels. Okay, I will stop for the question and also reflection at the chat box. I will invite our next speaker, more to intervention. We have a very special intervention speaker today from the representative of World Alliance of YMCA. He will talk on anti-discrimination, and also as we know, like right now we are having the Stop Asian Hate movement campaign, and Sokthea Phay from the World Alliance of YMCA will share with us his intervention about these issues. Over to you, Sokthea.
Thank you so much, Sharifa. Distinguished representative of UN civil society organization and fellow youth representative. My name is Sokthea Phay, representing the World Alliance of YMCA, which has been empowering young people to address global issues and take action for over 177 years. YMCA in 119 countries are stepping up as a global partner to eliminate racial discrimination by becoming a global youth anti-discrimination movement and advancing youth-led effort on multicultural organization. As far as we can remember until now, Black, Indigenous, people of color, including Asian and Pacific Islander, immigrants, LGBTQ+, and people with disability and different faiths have been suffering from many forms of discriminations. In all countries around the world, one or more of these could be the main barriers that prevent people from being able to survive, thrive, reach their potential, and lead. When these populations have endured pain beyond our description, they try to speak up, march on the street, and cry for support. With COVID-19 virus, we share the challenges that require equitable resources, response, and vaccine. However, long before the pandemic and until present time, another critical shared challenges has faced us, and that is the virus of hatred, discrimination, and racism. The virus requires positive transformation of personal acts of discrimination and the eradication of endemic, systemic, and institutionalized racism. If we do not work together to confront and eradicate discrimination and racism, people will continue to be oppressed. The question is, how can we confront and eradicate it? In the US, we are also facing critical challenge of white supremacy that continue to exist. The past 4 years, people of color have been attacked openly by this hatred, rhetoric rooted in white supremacy. Asian American and Pacific Islander continue to be blamed and attacked for COVID-19. Now, how can we be part of the solution to address this violation of human rights and proactively work as allies with all community? Together, we can confront any forms of discrimination, hate, and violence. However, first, we need to recognize the conscious and unconscious discriminatory thought and action within ourselves to confront discrimination in the society. We will not be able to solve systemic discrimination until we start ourselves. It begins with us. When we see discrimination against others, speak up. Engage in dialogue to the one discriminating to explain them why their actions or words are discriminatory. Encourage them to meet with the person they discriminate against to become more aware. Let's learn more about how to become a caring bystander to help de-escalate the discriminatory act. To eliminate it, we must work together to build or strengthen networks of existing movements, organizations, or individuals. We must identify clear examples of systemic discrimination and carefully analyze its root causes. Discrimination is a personal decision, but it is maintained and perpetuated by the system of society. We must have build awareness and provide educational tools for community organizing for a positive transformation of society, not just for a reformation. As we locally, nationally, and globally confront and eliminate hatred, racism, and discrimination, it requires not only those who own the problem to take responsibility, but also those who have benefited from the system in the country they live. Anywhere around the world, being just not a racist or non-discriminant cannot eliminate discrimination, systemic institutionalized racism. The world requires all of us to be anti-racist and anti-discriminant to take action. Not only we must be anti-racist and anti-discriminant, but we must also nurture children, young people as early on in life to maintain their nature of love, to make an inclusive, just, peaceful world where everyone is treated equally and equitably. Again, if we do not work together to confront and eradicate discrimination and racism, people will continue to be oppressed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sokthea, for your very insightful intervention. Yes, I very agree with you. We need proper education tool for the children to make them understand, I would say, how to be a global citizen. Because right now, if we are thinking only about our country, about our state, about our community, we will not think about others at large. So it is very important of educating our young people, maybe from the school level and also at the any education level, at least at home. We need to educate our children to be more aware of other people, more respectful, and also teach them how to be a good global citizen. Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Sokthea. I would like to invite our next intervention speaker, representing UN Desa, Mr. Ashish Kular, for you to give a little bit reflection or any intervention about this topic. Please welcome.
It's great to be here and to listen to everything that all the participants have been talking about. And of course, they are very insightful, all of us to do our work more effectively, especially in the field of youth engagement in the context of the UN. So to give you all a very short description of what UN Desa is, for those of you who might not know, the UN Desa, it's the Department of Economic and Social Affairs in the UN, and it supports a development pillar of the UN Secretariat. The UN system to sustainable development, and it's an tank of the line mission offers essentially to in the pursuit of development for all. And it does this by working on 3 areas of work. So one is support and norm setting.
I think we lost you, Ashish.
I think I lost the connection, so I will just change my location. Yeah. So I will just repeat the 3 areas of Desa's work. One is intergovernmental support and norm setting. The other is data collection analysis. And the third one is capacity building. Within this context, Desa engages a lot with young people, and it works a lot on the topic of youth development and youth policy. The division for social, the division for inclusive social development within Desa also acts as the UN's focal point on youth. Essentially, that's the home in the UN system on youth policy and development as a thematic issue. So just to give you the perspective that we come from to this conversation. In addition to that, I'd also like to highlight that for many, many years, until sometime last year, I used to be on the youth side, pushing the UN system and the multilateral system for greater youth engagement. And now I'm on the UN side. So hopefully that can, I'll be able to serve the cause from this side as well. Specifically in relation to the discussion that we're having here, I would like to point out that in addition to SDG 16, which of course all of us are familiar with, there are other anchor frameworks within the UN system that a lot of youth organizations, youth movements, and youth activists can use to leverage not only the UN system, but also national governments and regional bodies to more effectively and meaningfully engage young people. One of these is the World Program for Action on Youth, which was actually agreed to in 1994, 1995 by all the governments of the world. So essentially, this is the global framework on youth as a particular topic. This has many priority areas. The priority areas that are most relevant for this discussion is the full and effective participation of youth in the life of a society and in decision making, globalization and intergenerational issues. So these are anchors within the World Program for Action on Youth that young people can use to leverage their government. So again, I would just like to point to those. And of course, I can get into the details of what those priority areas specifically focus on if you want to talk about it. In addition to that, the means of implementation of the World Program for Action on Youth also talk about the national, regional, and international level. So that's to give you a framework from the point of view of the role a secretariat plays in the UN system, tries to elaborate everything that is out there and what are the entry points that that you can make use of. In addition to that, I was also asked to speak a little bit about the race and gender lens within this conversation. Of course, we all know the state of the statistics of youth engagement in decision-making avenues, and we also know the statistics of women in decision-making avenues, as they were discussed earlier in the event. What I would like to point out is once we start disaggregating these statistics of youth and women even further by a socioeconomic category and race, the reality is even much starker. So there are people that belong to specific socioeconomic and racial groups that might be young and might be women, but are not at all represented in decision-making avenues in the capacity of having being belonging from those specific groups. So this is a huge issue that also needs to be dealt with. Not the only, but one of the primary suggestions or observations for something like that, or to move forward on our work by taking into account the racial and gender dimension, would also be to be sensitive towards the further disaggregation of the numbers that we use to talk about representation and participation, and the variables of those disaggregation should also include different socioeconomic and racial groups. So that is something very important to keep in mind. So about minorities within minorities and how they tend to get left behind more than the others. In addition to this, I can also give you a little bit of a background on what UN Desa specifically does when it comes to certain key population groups within the context of their work in the UN system. So there is the interagency network on youth development. UN Desa currently serves as a permanent co-chair. There is the interagency network on women and gender equity. UN Desa serves as a member in the interagency network. There is the interagency group on aging, which particularly focuses on older persons, so slightly less relevant for this topic, but also it's a person-centric convening. And finally, UNDESA also serves as the chair of the interagency network on indigenous issues, and a huge component in the work within these interagency mechanisms is on participation and representation. Sorry, I used some jargon, but interagency mechanism essentially means a mechanism that brings together the whole UN system to coordinate better on that particular topic. So I think I have spoken more than the time allocated to me, but in a quick conclusion, I would like to point out that in addition to SCD 16, you also have available at your disposal the World Program for Action on Youth, and specifically its priority area on participation, intergenerational issues, and globalization. And on the other topic, I would like to really emphasize the need to further disaggregate data by socioeconomic groups, migrant status, racial groups, when talking about representation along the lines of gender and along the lines of age. And that's about it. And also it's my duty as a part of the secretary to say that we will be happy to receive your final outcomes and conclusions from this event as an input for us to inform our work on these topics. And we have a working relationship with the regional caucuses and the regional platforms and the sub-regional platforms. And we would be happy to take this conversation forward on how we can better integrate these views in our work in the UN system, including in the World Youth Report and the Secretary General's report on youth and so on and so forth. So that's about it from me. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ashish, for your sharing and also your highlights on the UN Desa rules, and maybe for our youth here, they could learn on how to engage with the UN system. For your information, there are many platforms provided for young people out there to engage with in the UN system through, for example, Major Group for Children and Youth, and also many other international youth organizations, which can lead you to the discussion at the global level. Okay, dear participants, before we are leading to the end, but we are not ending it yet. Yeah, Ashish? Okay. Before we end our session, we have a very special video.
That's fine.
So our team here already put in the chat box 2 things that you need to do before we end our session today. One is the feedback session of this event. You can get it at the link that my team provided at the chat box. And also we want to know what are your takeaways for this session. So we provide the Mentimeter link. Maybe I will pass to my friend Agatha. After this, you can start put your takeaways at the Mentimeter link at the chat box.
Yes, Shepa, it's ready now.
Jackie, you're sleeping. Some food remained, eh? There's food. Warm it for me and bring them.
It's important to mute.
Okay, thank you, Shefa. So dear participants, thank you for participating in our session today. And as I have written in the chat box, kindly fill just maybe 1 or 2 words. What is your takeaway from this event, youth and the future of government? So with Mentimeter, is the more people are writing the same idea or the same words, the more it's gonna get bigger. So as you can see in the screen, the biggest word is participation. So one of the biggest takeaway is participation, and then we see also empowerment. And some people also wrote youth capacity building, empower youth, learn a lot of new things, inclusion. That's very important. We have 21 participants, 22, and still growing. And it's still participation and empowerment as the key takeaway.
Last questions. Last questions.
I think we have done with the Q&A session. Shefa, correct me if I'm wrong. And Andrew, we are already in the takeaway session. So you can write down what is your takeaway or something that you got from this session that we discussed in this Zoom meeting. And it's still participation and empowerment and inclusion as the biggest words. We still gonna keep the link open for you to write down what is your takeaway, but it's very nice to hear that a lot of words here are reflecting what you got from this meeting, and I will be sharing this result also with Shefa and other colleagues to be the result of this session also. So thank you so much for participating in this side event, and thank you for your active participation. Over to you, Shefa.
Thank you so much, Agatha. Yes, I can see very, maybe they have similar insights of this session: participation, inclusion, empowerment. You can still contribute to this Mentimeter. We will not close it yet, but yeah, we'll stop sharing this one, and we will move forward to the next spatial video that I mentioned. So we have special video from the Office of Youth and Boy. My team will share the video shortly.
Hello everyone, my name is Jatma Vikramanayaka. I'm the United Nations Secretary General's Envoy on Youth. And I'm very excited to welcome you today to this important event on the sidelines of the Economic and Social Council's Youth Forum. This year is a special year for the ECOSOC Youth Forum because it marks the 10th year anniversary since the forum first started. Throughout the years, ECOSOC Youth Forum has provided the space and opportunity to host candid dialogues between member states and young leaders on the topics that are important and relevant for youth around the world. Many ideas and recommendations for Sustainable Development Goals implementation have come out of the ECOSOC Youth Forum, not only from the plenary sessions, regional and thematic discussions, but also from important dialogues that are taking place around the forum itself, such as this side event that you are attending right now. I'm very grateful to see the commitment that the organizers of this side event have given to open more spaces for young people to share their vision and action to address all the important topics that are relevant to the lives of young people. From climate action to employment to fighting against poverty and inequality and so much more. I'm very grateful also for all of you who are participating here, as this is truly reflecting of how young people are relentless in showing their commitment to bringing youth perspectives to the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. It's my great hope that the conversations, ideas, and recommendations that you gain from today's event will not stop here, but also will be carried through your participation in the main ECOSOC Youth Forum's many discussions. Thank you once again, and I wish you all a successful event.
Thank you so much for attending this session. I would like to end this session now, and yeah, maybe you can open your camera and wave to everyone. Thank you to all our speakers. Thank you to all our keynote speakers as well. And
thank you very much.
the intervention speakers. Thank you so much.
Mabuhay. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Salamat.
Thank you for all the support.
Thank you for our panels and keynote speaker. Greetings from Malaysia.
Gracias, gracias.
Merci, merci beaucoup. Merci.
Thank you.
Thank you very much and mabuhay from the Philippines.
Mabuhay. Salamat.
Terima kasih.
It's a pleasure from Mexico.
Yeah.
Thank you and good evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. See you again. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone. Love and respect from the US. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
On behalf of the IYC for Peace of the International Youth Center Kuala Lumpur, we are calling for application for 193 youth ambassadors from the UN member state countries to be part of our Flag of Peace project under the IYC for Peace. If you are interested, you can apply at the URL given at the poster and also at the chat box. So on behalf of the organizers, Desa, UNDP, IYC for Peace, IYC Kuala Lumpur, and Asian Youth Network, AYN, and also Asian Youth Council, as well as Major Group for Children and Youth for organizing this side event